Hi, welcome to my channel. My name is Anne and today I'm doing the Winter is Coming book tag. I saw Eva from Pretty Purple Polka Dots doing this video, so I'll leave her video down below, as well as the original tag, which was created by Catherine, I think about 6 years ago already, but it seemed like a really fun tag to do, so I'm doing it today. It's the 1st of December, so I figured this would be a fun tag to welcome winter and get into the festive season. So let's get right to it. The first question is snow. It is beautiful when it first falls, but then it starts to melt. Name a book or book series that you loved at the beginning, but then at the middle of it you realized you don't like it any longer. For this I chose The Silence of the Girls by Pat Barker. This book has actually been on my unhaul pile for a couple of months because I no longer want it in my bookcase because I'm that angry at it. When I started reading this, I really enjoyed it. I thought the writing was very good. I enjoyed seeing the, Trojan War? Yes, Trojan War from a female perspective, because that's what this book promised to do, show the Trojan War from a female perspective. But then as the story progressed, there was suddenly a change. It was almost as if the author had changed her mind about what she wanted to do. And most of the story was all about Achilles, and often even told through Achilles' perspective, which was not what we were promised we would get in this book. And it ended up being a story about a whiny, childish man, and I've read enough of those, so I was very disappointed with this book. It had a promising start, but then it ended up being a book I really hate. The second question is Snowflake, something beautiful and always different. Choose a book that stands out, that is different from all the other books you've read. For this I chose On a Sunbeam by Tilly Walden, which is a graphic novel, and I do own a physical copy of it, but it's currently at my friend's house because I really wanted her to read it because it's really, really good. It's a sci-fi graphic novel that's about a crew that goes into space to restore old structures, and it features a love story. There are only women or non-binary characters in this story, I think, if I remember correctly, which was really nice. The art style is very beautiful. I can't show it to you right now, but you'll just have to take my word for it. And I absolutely loved it. I gave it 5 stars when I read it earlier this year. And it was so beautiful and unlike anything I've ever read, both in terms of graphic novel and sci-fi story. Question number 3 is Snowman. It is always fun to make one with your family. Choose a book that a whole family could read. And for this I've chosen a book that I just finished this week, and it's Other Words for Home by Jasmine Warka. This is a middle grade novel that's written in verse, and I listened to it on audio, which was really nice. I often even forgot that it was written in verse because it does read like a story, but it just has a more beautiful flow to it. This is a novel about a young Syrian girl named Jude who moves to America with her mother and leaves behind her father and her brother. They move there because it's no longer safe for them in Syria, and then in America Jude has to get used to this whole new life. And there are also aspects of racism and discrimination to the story because Jude and her family are Muslim, and some people in the town really don't like that, as is the case, unfortunately, in a lot of towns for a lot of Muslim people. But overall, this is just a very heartwarming story that shows how Jude is growing up, how she's getting used to Western lifestyle, and how she finds a new place to really call her home. And Jude is a wonderful character. She's very strong, she knows what she wants, and it's just such a wonderful novel. I would recommend it to anyone because it's also very important, and I'm very glad that this book is there for young children to read so that they can learn about people from other cultures and why they move to Western countries and that they're not different from them at all. It was just wonderful. Question number 4 is Christmas. Choose a book that is full of happiness, that made you warm inside after reading it. For that I've chosen Nevermore by Jessica Townsend. This book had been on my shelves for a while, and this year I finally got to reading it in September, I think, and I absolutely loved this. This is actually another middle grade novel. It's about a girl called Morrigan Crow who believes she's cursed and destined to die on her 11th birthday. Yes, her 11th birthday, but then she is whisked away to this magical place called Nevermore, and she learns much more about herself, and she makes a lot of nice friends, and it's just absolutely wonderful. There are some sad moments in it too, but overall I thought this was so good, and I'd recommend it to anyone who's looking for a good book to give to children and anyone who's just looking for a nice book to read themselves. I think it's very well suited for around Christmas as well, because it is so wonderful and heartwarming. Question number 5. Santa Claus. He brings wonderful presents. Choose a book that you'd like to get for Christmas. So I thought about this for a while because I really haven't bought that many books lately. I've been more on a read the books I've already got on my shelves kick, and I have been reading some ebooks and listening to audiobooks, but I've really changed the way I buy books this year, because usually I would be able to give you a list of like 20 books I really want to read, but I now know that if I buy them, they end up being on my shelves for a long time, and I end up probably not reading them. So for this question, I actually chose a book that I read this year, but I borrowed it from my father, and it ended up being one of the best books I've read in a very long time, and that is A Different Drummer by William Melvin Kelly. And I would really like my own copy of this book to have it be on my shelf so I can look at it and remember how amazing I thought this book was. And if you want to know more about this book and my thoughts on it, I will leave a link to the video in which I give my review for this book down below and up above. Question number 6 is snowballing. It can be painful to be hit by a snowball. Choose a book that hurt, that made you feel some strong emotion like sadness or anger. For this one I've chosen Words in Deep Blue by Kath Crowley, which is another book I read earlier this year, and this actually ended up being a new absolute all-time favorite book for me. I really didn't expect that beforehand, because I bought this during a trip to the bookstore in spring, I think, and I bought it because it seemed nice and not because this was a book that had been on my TBR for a very long time. It was partly a cover buy and partly a this synopsis sounds good buy, and I don't do a lot of those anymore. Usually when I buy a book, it's a book that I've heard about countless times or a book that somebody else has recommended to me, but this wasn't, and for it to end up being such a new favorite is absolutely wonderful. It did hurt a lot because it is about grief and about death and about growing up, but I think those were also the parts that made me love it so much. There's just something about this book that feels very personal to me. It talked about some things that I just understood so well. I can't really explain it why I love this book so much. It's just absolutely wonderful, and I want to reread it soon already. Question number 7. Sledding. We all loved it when we were younger. Choose a book that you loved when you were a child. For this I've chosen a classic, Matilda by Roald Dahl. I kind of remember almost knowing this book by heart when I was little because I read it that often. It was one of my favorite books when I was little, and it remains one of my favorite books to this day. I didn't have this beautiful edition when I was little, but I got it for my birthday a few years ago, I think. It has color illustrations instead of the black and white ones I grew up with. And it's just so nice to sink back into this story of a little girl who discovers her love for reading and for some crazy magical ability. It will always be very special to me and be an ultimate favorite. Question number 8. Frostbite. Choose a book that you were really disappointed in. For this I've chosen Aurora Rising by Amy Kaufman and Jay Kristoff. There's actually a full review of this book on my channel, so I'll leave a link to that up above as well. I had really high hopes for this book. I was very excited about it when it was about to come out, because I loved the Illuminae Files, which is the other sci-fi series that these two authors have written together. I adored those books. They were so fast-paced, so cool. The format was really cool, so I was excited when they announced they were coming out with a new sci-fi series. But then I read this and I really didn't like it. I disliked the characters. I thought they were really obnoxious. I didn't like the storyline. I thought it was unoriginal, and it didn't have any suspense to it because I knew the characters were gonna come out on the other side unscathed, mostly. It did pick up a little bit towards the end, but there was nothing in this book that made me want to continue the series and read the second book, which has come out this year, I think. I really wanted to love it, but unfortunately it just wasn't for me. And then the last question is Reindeer, something that is dear to us. Choose a book that is of great sentimental value to you. For this, I first immediately thought of Matilda, but I didn't want to mention the same book twice. So instead, I went for Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte. I have about 4 editions of this book, but this one is my favorite. Me and my boyfriend came across this one in a secondhand bookshop in Dublin, and I was so excited when he handed it to me because it's a really old edition. It's from 1946, and this book is of course much older than that, but I really like having this classic on my shelves in this look. It holds sentimental value to me because I read this for the first time in high school, and this was one of the first classics, if not the first classic I read, and I fell in love with it. And I kind of bonded over it with my English teacher, who was my favorite teacher, and she borrowed me the film adaptation with Ralph Fiennes and Juliette Binoche, I think, as Heathcliff and Cathy. When I think back to reading this for the first time, it makes me really happy. I think I loved the love story back then as well, which is not why I love it now, because I now see that the love story in this book is very toxic and very awful, but I love it for the storytelling, for how horrible everyone is to each other. It's just kind of depressing, but also so good, and the atmosphere is so amazing, and I really want to reread it again because it's been a couple of years. And that was it for the Winter is Coming book tag. I never really know who to tag because I don't want to tag anyone who doesn't really want to do the tag and who then feels like they have to do the tag or stuff like that. So if you want to do this tag and you want to say that you've been tagged by someone, just say you've been tagged by me, or maybe answer some of the questions down below in the comments. I'd love to hear your answers to them. Please like this video if you liked it and subscribe to my channel if you want to see more of me, and have a wonderful day. Bye!